I heard a sound. It was like a trumpet, but not like any trumpet I had ever heard in marching bands or Holy Week processions. This sound came from everywhere at once. It resonated in the sky, on the earth, in my own chest. It was so loud I felt it could split mountains, so beautiful I wanted to cry, so urgent I knew something monumental was about to happen. The sound grew and grew until it filled the entire universe, and then it began from every corner of the earth, from the largest cities to the most remote villages, from deserts to jungles, from mountains to beaches. I began to see lights, thousands of them, millions, tiny bright points rising from the ground like upside-down fireflies, ascending into the sky at incredible speed. They weren't falling stars, but souls rising. They passed through buildings like smoke. They moved effortlessly through the clouds. They moved upward, always upward, all converging on the same point. I saw these lights coming out of hospitals where people had been dying. I saw lights rising from prisons where believers had been incarcerated for their faith. I saw lights emerging from humble homes where families had been praying together. I saw lights rising from churches where the faithful were worshipping. They came from Mexico, from the United States, from Brazil, from Africa, from Asia, from Europe, from every continent, every country, every city, rich and poor, young and old, men and women, all these souls ascending simultaneously. The sight was so beautiful that I don't have adequate words to describe it. It was like seeing God's harvest, the seeds he had planted for millennia finally being gathered, and the joy emanating from those lights was palpable. I could feel their excitement, their relief, their pure love. They were going home, finally, after years of waiting, of suffering, of remaining faithful in a world that rejected them. They were going home. Jesus looked at me and smiled, and that smile was like the sun rising after the darkest storm. "These are my people," Bernardo said. "These are the ones who believed, the ones who trusted, the ones who lived their faith, not just in word, but in truth. I am taking them with me before the worst comes. This is the rapture, the taking of my church." The lights gathered around us, forming an innumerable multitude. Now I could see them more clearly. They were no longer just lights, but people, real people, with glorified bodies that shone with a celestial glow. Their faces radiated peace and joy. They embraced each other, wept with happiness, and sang praises with voices so beautiful that the finest choirs on earth would seem dissonant in comparison. I saw a Mexican grandmother as my refuge, with her rebozo and all, laughing and dancing like a child. I saw an African man in a white robe raising his hands to heaven. I saw a young Asian woman with tears of joy streaming down her cheeks. I saw families reuniting, husbands and wives separated by death, now together again, parents embracing children they had lost too soon. It was a reunion like I had never seen, a celebration that made all earthly holidays seem sad in comparison, and I stood there watching it all, feeling so much love emanating from these souls that I thought my heart would burst. Jesus stretched out his arms and everyone fell silent. The silence was immediate, irreverent, and then his voice spoke, filling the entire space. "Welcome home, my beloved ones. You have run the race, you have fought the good fight, you have kept the faith. Now it is time to rest, to celebrate, to be with me forever." And the crowd erupted in praises so powerful they shook the heavens. But then Jesus made me look down again, at the earth those souls had just left, and what I saw filled me with profound terror. The world that had been frozen was now moving again, but it was completely different. The chaos I had seen before was nothing compared to this. Cars crashing on highways because their drivers had vanished in the middle of traffic, planes falling from the sky because the pilots were no longer in the cockpits, children crying in parks because their mothers had suddenly disappeared, husbands shouting the names of their wives who seconds before had been beside them, empty offices with computers still on and chairs spinning with no one in them, hospitals where doctors had disappeared, leaving patients in the middle of surgeries. The panic was total, absolute, unprecedented. The streets were filled with hysterical people trying to understand what had happened. I saw the news broadcasts coming from every country, reporters stammering as they tried to explain the inexplicable, mass disappearances worldwide. They said, Millions had vanished without a trace. There was no scientific explanation. Governments were in emergency session, and then the theories began: aliens, secret weapons, failed experiments, anything but the truth, because the truth was too terrifying to accept. The truth was that God had kept his promise and taken his own. I saw world leaders appearing on television with somber faces, promising answers, promising safety, promising that everything would return to normal, but their eyes betrayed them. They were just as lost as everyone else. I saw people turning against each other, blaming one another, looking for scapegoats, looting stores, fighting over food and water, the law of the strongest taking over. The structure of society was crumbling like a house of cards. Everything that kept civilization functioning, the laws, order, mutual trust, was evaporating in a matter of hours. And the saddest thing of all was that I saw people arriving at churches looking for answers, but many of those churches were empty because the true believers had already left. Those who remained were the nominally religious, the lukewarm, those who had never taken their faith seriously, and now, facing the reality of what had happened, they realized too late that they had been playing with fire. Some were falling from kneeling in repentance, weeping, begging for another chance. Others raged, cursing God, blaming him for leaving them behind. But the rapture had already happened. The door had closed, and what was coming now was the great tribulation. I couldn't bear it any longer. I turned to Jesus with tears streaming down my face. Lord, why? I cried out, why let this happen? Why take some and leave others behind? Where is the mercy in this? He looked at me with eyes filled with an ancient sadness, but also with unwavering justice. Bernardo, he said gently, I have been calling you for 2,000 years. I have sent prophets, teachers, evangelists. I have spoken through my word. I have touched hearts through my spirit. I have given countless signs, warnings, and opportunities, but many chose not to listen. They chose the world over me. They chose their pleasures over my truth. They chose sin over holiness. The rapture is not a punishment for those who remained. It is a fulfilled promise for those who believed. It is my mercy rescuing my bride before my wrath comes. For what is coming now, Bernardo, is the time of judgment that is written, the time when I will finally deal with the sin of humanity. His words hit me like waves. I thought about my own life, about all the times I had heard sermons about being ready, about not knowing the day or the hour, about watching and praying. How many times I nodded and then left the church to continue living as if I had all the time in the world. How many times had I postponed praying, postponed reading the Bible, postponed fixing the things I knew were wrong in my life. And now, standing here, seeing the consequences of that attitude multiplied by millions of people, I understood the gravity of what I was witnessing. Jesus raised his hand and another vision appeared before me. I saw a huge ark floating on turbulent waters. The rain was falling so hard it seemed as if the sky was pouring down on the earth. The waves were liquid mountains that swallowed everything in their path, trees, houses, animals, people, everything being swept away by the flood. But the ark floated safely, rocking with the waves, but never sinking. Inside, I could see Noah and his family, 8 people in total, surrounded by animals of all kinds, were safe, protected from the judgment that was destroying the outside world. The Bible, which I had read so many times, suddenly came alive in a new way. This wasn't just an ancient story, it was a pattern, a revelation of God's character. Just as I saved Noah and his family from the flood, Jesus said, so I will save my church from the tribulation to come. Noah preached for 120 years, warning people that judgment was coming. He built the ark in full view of everyone, but no one believed him. They mocked him, called him crazy, and went on with their lives as if nothing had happened. And when the rains came, it was too late. The door of the ark slammed shut, and only those inside were saved. The vision shifted, and I saw another scene, 2 cities burning with such intense fire that the sky itself seemed to be ablaze, Sodom and Gomorrah. The heat was so fierce that I could feel it even in my spiritual form. I saw Lot and his daughters running along a rocky path, angels sent urging them to move faster. Don't look back. The angels shouted, just run. They reached a cave in the mountains just as fire and brimstone began to rain from the sky. The cities were consumed in seconds, reduced to ashes and smoke. But Lot and his family were safe, rescued moments before the destruction. Just as I brought Lot out of Sodom before its destruction, Jesus explained, so I will bring my church out before the great tribulation. It is my pattern, Bernardo. I have always rescued the righteous before pouring out my wrath on the wicked. This is not new, it is written in the pages of history, in my word, in my unchanging character. The images kept coming, swift and powerful. I saw Jesus himself in a dark garden, Gethsemane. He was kneeling on the damp earth, his face contorted in agony. Before him was a cup, simple in appearance, but emanating such a profound darkness that it made me recoil. I could feel what that cup contained. It wasn't wine, it was the wrath of God, condensed, concentrated, all the judgment deserved for every sin ever committed, from Adam to the last human being to be born. Murders, rapes, thefts, lies, adulteries, idolatries, every imaginable evil was there, waiting to be punished. And Jesus, my Lord, was looking at that cup, knowing that he would have to drink it. His sweat fell to the ground like drops of blood, his body trembled. This is the cup of my Father's wrath, he told me. His voice broke with the pain of the memory. This cup contained the punishment for all the sins of all humanity. Someone had to drink it, Bernardo. God's justice demanded it. Sin cannot go unpunished, and I, because I love you, because I love every person who will ever live, I chose to drink it for you. I wept when I saw him, when I truly understood for the first time what he had done for me. It wasn't just a death, it was taking upon himself the full wrath of God that I deserved. The scene changed, and now I saw him on the cross, his body mangled, bleeding, hanging between heaven and earth. The jeers of the crowd, the spittle, the crown of thorns digging into his forehead. But the worst part wasn't the physical pain, it was the spiritual agony of bearing the weight of all the sin in the world. I saw the moment when the Father had to turn his face away, because holiness cannot look upon sin. I saw Jesus cry out, my God, why have you forsaken me? Experiencing the separation from God that I should have experienced for all eternity, and then, with his last breath, he cried out, it is finished. The cup was empty. He had drunk to the last drop. The price was paid in full, because I drank that cup. Bernard said Jesus, now, standing beside me in all his resurrected splendor, those who trust in me will never have to taste it. The great tribulation coming upon the earth is the manifestation of that same wrath, but poured out on a world that rejected me. My church, my bride, will not experience that wrath because my blood has already paid for their sins. They were washed, cleansed, justified. Why would I subject them to the punishment I already paid for them? It doesn't make sense, it doesn't align with my character or my word. The revelation left me speechless. Everything made sense now. The rapture wasn't God being cruel to those he was leaving behind, it was God being faithful to his promise to protect those who belong to him. It was the fulfillment of his plan of salvation, the reward for those who had put their faith in him. Another vision unfolded. I saw an old man standing on a rocky island, just gazing up at the sky. It was the Apostle John, exiled on Patmos for his faith. Heaven above him opened like a curtain being torn in two, and a door appeared bright, radiant, throbbing with divine power. A voice like a trumpet sounded, "Come up here," and in an instant, John was lifted up, snatched from the earth, carried through that door to the throne of God. What he saw there was astonishing. The throne surrounded by heavenly beings, the 24 elders, the sea of crystal, the Lamb that appeared to have been slain, and from that exalted position, God showed John what was to come upon the earth. I saw the seals being opened one by one. The first seal released a rider on a white horse, a conqueror going forth to conquer. The second seal brought a rider on a red horse who took peace from the earth so that people would kill one another. The third seal revealed a rider on a black horse bringing such a severe famine that the price of food skyrocketed. The fourth seal showed a rider on a pale horse named Death, and Hades followed him, killing a quarter of the world's population with sword, famine, pestilence, and wild beasts. The fifth seal revealed the souls of martyrs under the altar, people who would be killed during the tribulation for their testimony of Jesus. The sixth seal brought a massive earthquake, the sun was darkened, the moon turned blood red, the stars fell from the sky, and the powerful of the earth hid in caves, begging that the mountains would fall on them, and that was only the beginning. Then came the trumpets. The first trumpet brought hail and fire mixed with blood that scorched a third of the earth. The second trumpet hurled something like a great burning mountain into the sea, turning a third of the sea into blood and killing a third of the sea creatures. The third trumpet caused a star to fall from the sky, poisoning a third of the rivers. The fourth trumpet darkened a third of the sun, moon, and stars. The fifth trumpet opened the abyss, and demonic locusts emerged, tormenting people for 5 months with such terrible pain that they sought death but could not find it. The sixth trumpet released 4 angels who killed a third of humanity. The horror was unimaginable. I saw entire cities wiped off the map. I saw oceans serving. I saw skies darkening for days. I saw creatures emerging from dimensions that shouldn't exist, tormenting humanity. I saw diseases rotting people's flesh while they were still alive. I saw thirst so extreme that people drank poisoned water, knowing it would kill them because it was better than dying of thirst. I saw total chaos, the very fabric of reality seeming to break down, and in the midst of all this, I saw a man emerge. He was charismatic, powerful, with answers for everything. The world hailed him as savior. He promised peace. He promised unity. He promised solutions. He signed treaties. He performed fake miracles with the help of demonic powers. But in all this vision of horror, I noticed something crucial. The church, the true church that had been raptured, wasn't there. They weren't suffering these plagues. They weren't being tormented. They weren't dying in these catastrophes. They had been removed before all this began. Bernard, Jesus said, drawing my attention back to him. Do you see why the rapture must occur before the tribulation? This is my wrath being poured out on a rebellious world. Why would I subject my bride, washed by my blood, purchased with my life, to this judgment? Would it contradict everything I did on the cross? It would be as if my sacrifice weren't enough, but it was enough, Bernard, it was more than enough, and those who believe in me are protected from this wrath, not because they are perfect, but because they are covered by my blood. Then the scene changed again, and I found myself in a completely different place. It was a hall so vast that I couldn't see its boundaries. The walls glittered with precious stones I had never seen on earth, each emanating its own soft light. The floor appeared to be made of pure gold, so pure that it was transparent as crystal, and there was a table, the longest and the most beautiful table imaginable, laden with food that made even the finest earthly banquet seem like hospital fare. But it wasn't the food that drew my attention, it was the people, millions of them, dressed in white robes that shone with celestial purity, sat around that table laughing, weeping with joy, embracing, singing. Their faces radiated such complete, perfect happiness that it hurt to look at them because it reminded me how empty my joy on earth had been in comparison. This is the wedding supper of the Lamb, Jesus said, and his voice was filled with a joy I had never heard from him before. This is the celebration, the reunion I have been waiting for since before the foundation of the world. While tribulation sweeps the earth down, my church is here with me, safe, loved, celebrating. I saw familiar faces in the crowd, my mother, who had died 30 years ago, her smile as bright as I remembered it, my younger brother, whom we lost when he was only 20 in an accident, now young and radiant, friends from my childhood who had faithfully followed Christ, people from my church who had died in the faith. They were all there, all happy, all home, and at the center of it all, presiding over the celebration like the bridegroom finally marrying his beloved, was Jesus. He lifted a cup, and everyone was silent. This is my blood of the new covenant, he said, shed for many for the forgiveness of sins. Drink from it and remember what I did for you. You will never have to suffer again. You will never again shed tears of pain. You will never again be separated from me. You are home forever. And the crowd erupted in such powerful praise that I felt the entire universe vibrate with the sound. I wept not from sadness, but from a joy mingled with longing. I wanted to be there. I wanted to sit at that table. I wanted to be part of that celebration. But Jesus looked at me and shook his head gently. It is not your time yet, Bernardo. You must return. No, I pleaded. Please, Lord, let me stay. I don't want to go back to that world. I don't want to leave this place. But he placed his hand on my shoulder, and his touch, though gentle, was firm. You have a task to accomplish, he said. You must return and tell others what you have seen. Many are asleep, Bernardo. Many think they have time. Many believe the lies he tells that my church will go through tribulation, that they must prepare to suffer my wrath. But that's not true. I need you to tell them the truth. I need you to warn them that time is running out. I need you to tell them that the rapture is real, that the tribulation is real, and that the only way to escape is by surrendering their lives to me now, today, without delay. But, Lord, I protested, who will believe me? I'm just an 80-year-old man. They'll think I'm senile, that death has affected my brain. No matter what they think, he replied, some will listen, and those some need this message. I'm not sending you to convince everyone. I'm sending you to plant seeds, to give warnings, to offer hope. The Holy Spirit will do the rest. Your job is to be faithful, not to be successful. Before I could reply, I felt that tug again, that feeling of being pulled back. The light in the hall began to fade. The sounds of the celebration grew more distant. Jesus looked at me one last time. Remember everything I have shown you, he said, and live differently. Don't waste the time you have left. Love your refuge with all your heart. Talk to your children, your grandchildren. Share my love with everyone you can, and above all, keep your eyes on me because I'm coming soon, Bernardo, very soon.